Ozonics Killerwinds podcast back again. I'm Cole Tanner.
I'm Nick Simon.
Here we go. We're doing things a little different today.
Yep.
It's the end of October, and we thought, you know what? Let's put a little spice into it. We are recording this podcast with the tightest window possible for you to get this produced, to get this on the internet for people to listen to.
Yep.
To give the most up-to-date rut report we possibly could do.
Yep.
Without skipping work this morning and going out this morning to see what would have happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I was joking before the podcast started that I don't think that you've hunted the Iowa whitetail rut until you get a little sick.
Yeah.
And you can hear my voice, a little raspy, feel like I'm an octave down.
Yeah.
I'm getting a little bit of scratch.
Yeah. I woke up with a weird headache.
It's not like it's this bad.
But it's getting there. It's a little bad. You got a headache, huh?
Yeah. I woke up with a little headache.
A little froggy headache?
Yeah. I think it's just from
Pushing a little hard?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, we didn't really push too crazy hard, but
Hard enough.
yeah. So
Well, my wife always gets mad at me because and Nick made a joke with me the other day about how I always say that I'm burning the candle.
yeah.
And you walked out to me and you're like, "Hey Cole, there's no wax on the candle." I'm like, really? He's like, "Yeah, you look really bad."
Yeah.
So actually on Saturday night, I got home, went inside, charged the HR 600s, and I brushed my teeth, took my contacts out, and went straight to bed.
I know when you dropped me off, as soon as I was shutting the door, Cole likes to stay up to like 2:00 and then wake up at like 3:45. So
Yeah.
but I was closing the door. I'm like, let's try and be in bed by like 10:30.
Yeah.
And you go,
First you said 9.
Yeah.
Let's try to be in bed by 9. And I'm like, yeah, right.
yeah. And then he's like, I ain't going to bed till 11:30. And then actually he was the one that got to bed at a good time. I was up way too late on Saturday, but
I was setting my alarms and I looked at the clock on my phone and it said 8:50.
Yeah.
I was going to bed. I'm like, I'm going to go to bed. And I actually I felt a lot better yesterday and I feel a lot better today.
yeah.
Yeah.
I was dragging yesterday morning. I couldn't get to sleep on Saturday night.
Yeah, man. It's sleep is a lot of people say sleep is a superpower.
Oh yeah.
So today we are doing a rut report. And I was thinking about this before we started today. I feel like the rut is like a roller coaster at an amusement park.
Mm-hmm.
And the season, the bow season and the lead up to the rut, the pre-rut, the rut, and the post-rut is a lot like what you experience when you go to an amusement park and roller coaster. First, you get to the amusement park and you just kind of get to look at the roller coaster.
Mm-hmm.
That is October.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually you're like, okay, I'm going on it. So then you go and get in line. I feel like that's what we've been in for a while here. We've been waiting in line.
Yeah.
I think what we experienced this past week and this weekend is we finally got on the roller coaster.
Yeah.
We're not going down the really steep up and downs and the hula hoops and upside down.
Yeah.
We haven't got to that part yet. But the roller coaster, we've loaded, we got our shoulder straps on, and we're starting to tick up towards the first big hill.
Yeah.
And you want to feel like it's going tick, 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 tick. It kind of feels like it's going tick, tick.
It's a slow.
We're not going up the hill very fast, but I definitely feel like we're on the roller coaster and we're heading up to the sign that says the point of no return.
Yeah.
And so hopefully here soon we get to go down that first big hill.
Yeah, exactly. I think
At least we're on it though now.
Yeah.
I do feel like we're on the roller coaster.
Yeah, I think we're really close. I think
Yeah.
we're really, really close. I'd say it was probably one of our best weekends we've had so far.
Well, by far, 100% by far best
Yeah.
weekend. I mean, it feels like, and again, part of it is just the way that our work and life schedules work out. Afternoons are just not very possible.
Yeah.
They would be possible if we took time off or whatever,
Yeah.
or if you wanted to sneak out at 5:00, but that just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
To be busting deer
Especially
out,
this time of year, it's getting dark by 6:40.
Yep.
I mean, very last light is like 6:42, I think. So
Yep. So what we've been able to do over the last few weeks has been a lot of morning hunts.
yeah.
We did that this week too, or this weekend too, but we also got to do some afternoons. It feels like afternoons are kind of king right now.
Yeah.
We've been hunting in the woods in the morning.
Yeah.
And we've been hunting field edges in the afternoon.
Yep.
I think sometimes when you say hunting in the woods in the morning, that kind of makes guys cringe. You're like, oh, geez, you're trying to sneak in.
Yeah.
And obviously, we're not hunting like 500, 600 yards in the woods. We're just hunting.
Just up the ridge, basically.
Yeah, 40, 50, 100 yards off the field edge just to get in there just a skosh.
Yeah.
Where we think they're going to want to, when they get off the edge and they're kind of lollygagging to where they want to bed down, we're trying to get in there a little bit.
Yeah. And you hunted field edge yesterday morning.
Yep.
And
that really was because we had a south wind.
Yeah.
And there's not really conducive multiple south wind spots. And so we were kind of trying to, again, it's just, we still feel like we're going up towards the top of the first big hill. And so I'm not trying to like blow everything out.
Yeah, exactly.
So, you know what I mean? And put a lot of excessive pressure.
Yeah.
So we just kind of hunted where we wanted to hunt, where south winds were conducive. And that meant the river, and that meant, where you were.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep, exactly.
And I think that kind of solidified kind of what we're doing a little bit. It felt like just from you sitting field edge in the morning compared to at night. I mean, the nights we've been seeing anywhere between 10 and 15 deer on the field edges, but then
in the evenings.
In the evening, but then yesterday morning
it was Tweety birds.
Yeah, there wasn't much going on. So,
if there was any crickets left, since we've gotten a couple frosters, no more bugs. Hallelujah for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been pretty slow in the mornings.
Yeah.
That, like I said, the goal has been to try to put you in some of the best spots. And that kind of means that I was like, well, I'm just going to try to go where I can go. And you never know.
Yeah, exactly.
Because look a little buck just so happened to walk by right at first sight. There he was.
Yeah.
That's the type of deer that we're looking to shoot. But yeah, it definitely feels like afternoons have been a lot hardier,
Yeah.
A lot more deer moving. On Saturday we saw deer at 5:00.
Yeah. And it seems like they're just...
yesterday I think you texted me you saw your first deer at like 4:45. I mean, boom, they were they're just out. They're out earlier.
Yeah, and they seem more active too.
Yep.
Like it just seems like you see them travel more. Like they're out and about a lot more in the evening right now. It seems like than in the morning for sure. And just the activity is just more.
Yep.
I think so.
I think I've talked a lot about how I like to use October as the opportunity to really try to harvest some does. Hasn't 100% worked out that way for me this year in that regard.
Yeah.
Just haven't had a lot of great opportunity.
Yeah.
But I think what we're really looking for is starting to try to see some bucks.
Yeah.
And we have seen that a bit now in the evenings, where you've seen bucks that are just, they're not like full on dog and chasing or anything like that. But we did watch on Saturday, a tight rack, little basket rack buck kind of bump a doe along. And he came out, he fed within 100 yards of me on the upwind side. And then he went and you saw him. He was like, oh, okay, I'm going to go work through these woods. He worked through 30 minutes later. Boom. He comes out with a doe.
Yeah.
Just kind of like, she just kind of walked out looking back.
Yeah.
And she kept walking. I'm like, I bet that buck's gonna be behind. Sure enough, there he came out. And he'd feed and he'd look at her and he'd feed and he'd look at her and she'd kind of move all around. Then she decided, oh, I want to go to this side of the fence. She got onto the piece that we could hunt. And then sure enough, there he comes through the fence. Well, when they came through the fence, then he kind of dog her. He kind of put his head down low. But then she just kind of skipped ahead. And then it was, okay, fine. You're not ready. You're cool. And then he just was like, oh, I'm going to go this way.
Yeah.
And then he just walked off and he's like, oh, I'm going to go cruise over here. And so we saw bucks with their ears pinned back at each other.
Yep.
Kind of posturing up, being like, hey, what are you doing? You know what I mean? Type deal. So it feels like we're going up that first big hill.
Yeah. And Saturday night too, I saw it at this spot. There's a gap in the wood line on the neighbors. That's, how far do you think that is? Probably
150, 200 yards.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, it's not too terribly far. I mean, you can clearly see deer, see what they are. And I was just looking over there and there's a doe in the gap. And then soon after, a pretty nice buck came and just kind of didn't really push her, but just followed her into the woods. And then they never came back out.
Yep.
So, I mean, I'm assuming he was just hanging out there with her and stuff like that. But nice buck. He's a 8-pointer with a split G2.
Which we'd had encounters with. We had encounters with him the weekend before with a couple other bucks.
I don't know if it was him.
Oh, really? I thought that was him.
I thought it was, but I couldn't quite make out the sticker.
It was really dark.
It was really dark.
It was right at last light.
But at first, if it's not, it's a very similar sized deer, very similar. But But we had a ton of pictures of him in the summer, and we saw him in the summer too. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so that was good to. I mean, just to see bucks like that kind of on their feet, it's just kind of a telltale sign that I feel like it's. I feel safe to say that it's starting.
Yeah,
for sure.
Well, the other thing that I'll say is, which this has been. It's just wild how every year the rut can be so different. Mm-hmm. And it's funny how, I have a journal that I used to keep really, really religiously for years and years and years. I actually flipped through that the other day and just looked back to, late October.
Yeah.
And you see a lot of what I wrote in there this is from 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Of just like, holy cow, it's on like Donkey Kong. We're not experiencing that this year.
No.
I've been really blown away by, and again, we have 2 private spots. We have 2 public spots that we have a really good handle on.
Yeah.
That we've spent time, we've put the time in. We have years of experience. I have years and years of experience in some of these spots. And this is where the community scrape would be. This is the trees that they've rubbed on in the past. We are not seeing any of that.
No.
It is unbelievable.
Yeah.
For me, I feel like it's like, Jesus, this is just wild. Mm-hmm. We've heard on social media, different people that are also kind of doing these types of rut reports talking about how it just feels so slow. Everything's in slow motion.
Yep.
I feel that's a great way of putting it. It does. It just feels like it's slow motion. I will say on Saturday, I saw my first good rub.
Yeah.
That was on a tree that had very obviously been rubbed before. I can put a picture of it right here.
Yep.
It was obviously rubbed before, and that was like, okay, that's a good sign.
Yeah, it's fresh.
It's fresh. Like, okay, jackpot. Okay, here we go.
Yeah.
Here we go. Come on. But yeah, it's just interesting, and just even to see that little buck go up and kind of bump that doe like that, like usually by now it's like, they're just kind of like, you see end of October, you see a lot of bucks cruising. We're seeing just a little bit of that. It's just, we're ticking up that hill. Again, we're looking for that buck activity. The buck activity that we're seeing is a lot of small bucks. Mm-hmm. The mature deer, the target deer that we're looking for, everything has still really been the middle of the night.
Yep.
Now with that said as well, we have definitely started to see some of those bucks show back up. It had been, if the cameras were a temperature, they were ice cold for a few weeks.
Yeah.
Ice cold. People that I had called, buddies, and talked to, hey man, how your cameras doing? I was trying to check if the batteries were in them because I can't get a picture for nothing.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm experiencing too. A lot of wind trips, there's nothing, And now all of a sudden the cameras feel like they're like a little bit warmer, lukewarm. They're not hot, but they're all of a sudden it's like we had a buck on Saturday.
Yep.
A buck that we're calling 3G2.
Yeah.
He's got some cool kickers off his left G2.
Yeah.
That you had some awesome velvet video of in the summer. Mm-hmm. We had him on camera last time you would look back on August 15th.
Yep, August 15th. And we had him one time before that, like dead middle of summer too.
Yeah. So probably about, a quarter of a mile, between a quarter and a half mile away from where we saw him or had him on camera this time. Mm-hmm. He was at what we call the river, and then he was up on the spot we call the co-op.
Yep.
And he walked by that camera at 6:40, which is technically the last light.
Yeah.
Being in there, that is 6:40 is dark.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's not midnight.
No.
You know what I mean?
No,
so that's encouraging.
Yeah,
that's encouraging.
Like
that, and you had made a good point about that. Go ahead and say what you were going to say. You said before this. I thought that was so true.
Well, it's just, we know that he doesn't necessarily bed on the property that we hunt. We know he probably beds on the neighbors. Obviously not sure where, but seeing him at 6:40 is just a really good sign because you know that he is cruising and putting on some miles in daylight. So I think it's just, again, it's just really good to see a deer like that being able to move. And that deer is super killable right there. But if you split the distance between,
he would have been totally at legal shooting light.
Exactly.
He was on his feet during the day.
Yeah.
From somewhere.
Yeah.
We just so happened to see him where we saw him.
And traveling. It's not like he just got up out of his bed and went to stretch his legs or something like that. He was on a mission for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, so but like we talked about earlier, it just feels like the does just aren't ready yet. Mm-hmm. The does aren't just ready. And even the does, their just general demeanor.
Yeah.
They're just acting like they're putting on the feed bag.
Yep, they're out feeding.
They're
got
just
their
looking
fawns
around.
with them still.
There you go. They're not running.
Yeah.
They're just like, they see a buck and they're like, oh, hey, what are you doing?
Yeah.
I'm going to keep eating over here. And they just go back to feeding. It just feels like September, October.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
the bucks are like, hey,
Yeah.
let's go. And they're
Especially
like,
young
and they're
bucks.
just like, nope, we're good.
Yeah.
And they're not, because like you said, it's interesting how you see all these does, and that's for me, that's why October's always been so good. It's like, man, oh man, let's kill some does. And then all of a sudden you're like, man, I've had such great October. Man, if I keep this into November, like, wow, I'm gonna really stack some deer up. Well, all of a sudden, then the does just vanish.
Yeah.
And they don't want to be bothered,
Yeah,
right? And they just they just kind of fall off the map. But we're not seeing that.
Yeah.
The does are really, really out there.
Yeah. Yep.
You know, so, but yeah, like I said, getting to see 3G2 like that was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
We actually got to see Doc finally again.
Yeah,
Man, he had been. It's funny how when a deer, you have him all summer and then he disappears and then you just start reeling like, where did he go?
Yeah.
Is it why aren't we getting him on camera? We got cameras out there. Like he's got to walk by. He obviously wasn't there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, because he was like insanely consistent throughout the summer.
yeah,
I mean, we had pictures of him. Seemed like every single night, every night, daylight. Like, I mean, he was there all the way up until September. We had daylight pictures of him on September 24th.
yep.
I mean, just broad daylight, and like that was like when I saw that, I'm like, okay, well, maybe.
And we tried to go in there with
youth
Jet
season, yep.
and try on those when we got him on daylight. It's like, okay, dude, come back out. And then the bucks he was with came back out,
Yeah, but
and then
not
he
him.
didn't come out. And then he just kind of just was like,
Yeah.
see ya.
Yeah, but when we got pictures of him in September, I'm like, man, he might really stick around here and be a buck that we can really chase. But then it was just
Yeah,
nothing.
fell off the map.
Yeah, fell
But
off.
it's funny though because where we got him on camera, we actually put a camera in a spot that, you know, it's like kind of right on the edge of the woods. It's like, oh, we felt like it's like, man, it'd be nice to get a camera down in there. So we walked in there 2 weeks ago, just kind of looked it over, zero sign. But it's like, oh, there's a really good trail right here. It kind of comes around the corner and trails come in. Like, man, let's try this. Sure enough, that's where we got him.
Yep, and he
Yep.
he came out at a spot that has been really good. It was really good last year. It's kind of been a little bit slow this year. Coming out of just solid bedding,
Yeah.
like really solid bedding. So
Yep. No, yeah. So it's been interesting. And then, like you said, so Doc's back, which is nice. That 3G2 buck to see him, you know, there is really exciting.
yep,
We have a buck that we've nicknamed the Canadian. He's been pretty MIA.
Yep.
But I talked to a guy that sounded like he for sure saw him.
Yeah.
He described exactly what he looked like. He goes,
Yeah.
man, there's this big, tall, tight, forked, you know,
Yep.
buck. And he's like, God, he looked like a stud.
yeah,
It's probably him.
yeah,
You know, and within a quarter of a mile of where that camera's at on a private piece.
yeah.
So yeah.
That's
So
right there.
so to kind of know that he's around there somewhere, which we kind of figured, but it's just kind of nice to like go, oh, there you go.
Yeah,
I'll tell you what, the buck that that we're both really, really just
wanting to even just see.
him on the hoof.
Yeah.
Just to see him and go, there you are.
Yeah.
Is World Traveler.
Yeah.
You know, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah,
So we had him show up again this last just about 4 or 5 days ago, October 23rd. Of course, in World Traveler fashion, he showed up a mile and a half away on the other piece of private.
haven't had him there. Haven't had
Having him
all
there
year.
all year. He's been over on this other spot, and sure enough, he shows up on his other spot. So you want to talk about a buck that is just
Yeah.
on his feet,
Which it's-
putting on the miles.
Well, and it's funny too. I mean, this time of year, that's nothing for a buck,
Right.
But the way it's just so funny because we haven't seen him there. The last time we saw him there was like January 7th or something crazy like that, like way late in the year where you wouldn't think a deer would be traveling that much. But
Yep.
it's like, man, I guess he's living up to his name.
Yeah, he's traveling.
He likes to cruise.
Yeah, he's traveling.
Yeah.
So like I said, we got World Traveler. And again, all these deer we're describing, except for 3G2, that was just right at last light, everything has been in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Everything.
it's just been middle of the night. Which again, that's what you're hoping for too. We talked about that you're hoping that this schedule, this time of year, as soon as you start to kind of go down like that first big hill and then it goes back and it loops around, go down and up, you hope that these deer's schedule flips a little bit.
Yeah.
Instead of it being midnight, it's 10, and then it's 8:30, and then it's 7, then it's all of a sudden there they are. And then it's noon,
Yeah,
you know, and then
exactly.
it's 10 o'clock, 2 o'clock, he's on his feet during the day.
Yeah.
Again, you know, they start to think differently.
Yeah.
When the rut kicks in and they're ready to breed and they're out there moving, they're not thinking about anything else.
Yeah, exactly. And
You know,
I think the the mindset that I've kind of been thinking about and we've just been doing. But it's like right now I just feel like it's a time of year where if you have a time to go out, you should probably be in a stand because I feel like this time of year it's really hard to chase deer off
Yes.
of a camera. I feel like look at like co-op for example. We got him on camera there. We went in there hoping to get lucky and get in there, but it's like if you can beat them to that spot and be there when they're there the first time, man, that is huge just because you just never know.
Well, you never know. And like, I keep going back to what Danny Ferris made a comment of about how these big bucks, they find a hole and you're never going to find them in that hole because they just dig themselves even deeper.
Yeah.
But I think to expand on that as well, and I said this on Saturday, whitetail hunting, when you're going up the hill of the roller coaster and you're kind of in this weird limbo where the rut's not really kicked in yet, but you're starting to kind of see this pre-rut activity, is you have to figure out a way to get inside the bubble. You got to get in that deer bubble.
Yeah.
Because if you get in the bubble, all of a sudden you get inside, you get in that bubble and you're like, well, this is pretty awesome. This is where they are. If you're outside the bubble, you just kind of feel like you're just sitting there on the outside looking in, no pun intended.
Yeah.
But we're just trying to figure out a way to get inside the bubble. We don't want to pop the bubble.
Yeah.
But we want to get inside the bubble. And I feel like a lot of these deer that are getting killed right now, guys are finding a way to get in the bubble. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
They're sounds like a lot of guys are experiencing exactly what we're experiencing.
Yeah.
Just slow, you know? But if you can get in that bubble, and if you can, like you said, sometimes it's just the harder you work, the luckier you get.
Yeah.
And sometimes that is deer hunting. You just, man, where should I go today? You know what? I'm going to go hunt that middle spot. You get in there, and then all of a sudden, there he walks by.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes it's, you know, if you're trying to, it's like, you know, they talk about that with elk hunting. If you try to catch a herd of elk, you'll never catch them.
Yeah.
Because they will just outwalk you.
Yeah, exactly.
But if you get in front of them, let it walk to you, that's a whole other thing. And we're just trying to figure out, you're trying to get a little lucky, you're trying to pin the tail on the donkey.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
Sometimes when you're trying to pin the tail on the donkey, you don't even know which wall the donkey's on.
Yeah, you made that comment this weekend. That's funny.
Yeah, you know, Mr. You know, sometimes if we didn't have bad luck, we didn't have any luck at all. But we're trying to get inside that bubble.
Yeah.
You know, but there has been a few bucks that have been MIA, which is a little disappointing. We got a buck that we named Gas. He's got tall G2s and G3s and huge brows. Wide. He's basically the guy that would bully up on World Traveler.
Yeah.
If they got in a fight, it wouldn't even be
Yeah, he's a stud.
He's probably a 5.5-year-old buck for sure.
Yeah.
He's a crank.
Yeah.
We haven't had him on camera since September 7th.
Yeah.
So he's just been MIL altogether.
Yeah.
Again, if you're trying to figure out like a home range of that deer, I don't feel like where we are is 100% his home range. It may be on the very edge of it.
Yeah.
And he just so happened to pass through.
Yeah.
But, and then the big kahuna, number 33.
Yeah, that big Johnson.
That big guy, he has been way missing.
Yeah.
But that's a weird thing about that public spot is that has been incredibly slow.
Super slow.
Oh,
I
my
don't know
goodness.
if it's those duck holes or whatever got some water in them and there's just more pressure from duck hunters. I don't know.
I just...
You would know better because you've hunted in the past.
I mean, it's funny because I've never experienced this with trail cameras where there was just no bucks on camera this late.
Yeah.
And we've spent time out there.
Yeah.
And spent time where I go, okay, let's check here for scrapes. Let's check here for scrapes, rubs here, rubs there, and just not seeing them.
Yeah.
And actually, interestingly, we hunted that and I was getting down to walk out. And it was in a morning, right?
Morning, yeah.
Yeah. That was not this weekend, but last weekend. And it's kind of funny how sometimes things just kind of happen and you almost kind of feel like it happens for a reason. Because I was walking out and there was the trail cameras there. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go back and look behind that trail cam. Sometimes they, instead of having a nice, scrape right there on the edge, it might be just back behind it. It's where it's been there before. So I just kind of said, I was like, I'll go check that. So I went back to check that while I'm just looking and I hear something walking through the woods and I'm like, okay, that's either the deer of all deers or it's a person, you know, could have been a deer because the way it was just kind of tromping. I'm like, well, maybe it's just a buck that's just working through. So I kind of like got behind a tree. Well, here it was a hunter. So come to find out it was the guy that gets to hunt this private piece that I've looked at for a really long time.
asked for permission this summer.
Yeah, I've asked for permission a dozen times.
Yeah.
Seriously. So he sees me and I see him, and so I do the old hey wave, and he kind of waved back, and then I stood there like, why don't you come over here? So then he walks over. A really nice guy. We had a good long conversation. I figured out who he was, and he figured out who I was. He's like, "Oh, you're the guy that keeps asking permission." I'm like, "Yep, that's me." You know, and I'm like, "And you're the hired hand?" And he's like, "Yes, I am." You know, and so, but we had a good conversation about, and I think that was what I kind of want to talk about too. Is we did a podcast a long time ago about not, don't be that guy. Mm-hmm. And I tell you what, I really appreciated how candid and honest he was, and how nice he was.
Yeah.
For the fact that sometimes I feel like when you meet guys, your dad had not the greatest experience.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, really bad this weekend.
Yeah. Like, we're all trying to do the same thing. Like, we can coexist. You know what I mean? Like, it's okay.
Yeah.
You know? And so he was really nice. He's hunted this for a long time, and he kind of figured that there was somebody else out there like me, because you could see the stands and, da-da-da-da-da. And so we had a good long talk. But interestingly, he said the same thing. He's like, geez, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
He's like, there is nothing up in here.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, I was wondering about that. I'm like, I'm not going to lie. I've definitely glassed it from the fence. He's like, yeah, there's not a scrape or rub. He's like, I'm not seeing. He actually hunted early muzz.
Yeah.
He gets an early muzz tag every year. And he's like, yeah, I hunt early muzz hard. And then I just go right from that into the pre-rut and bow hunt it hard. And he's like, there ain't nothing going on.
Yeah.
Nothing. It's like, huh. He's like, yeah, I don't know what the heck's the deal. And that's what I feel like we've experienced too. It's just been, that spot
Been
especially
so
has just
off.
been weird.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, all of Iowa this past weekend really experienced, the first big orange army of the year, opening pheasant season.
Yep.
The other big orange army will be first shotgun.
Yep.
And then second shotgun. Seems like there's a really bit, like 3 really big orange pushes.
Yeah.
And we saw it on the cameras. Every
Yeah.
camera had orange vest dogs and orange vest hunters walking by, and more power to them. I love
which is
pheasant.
great.
Yeah, it's great. I love pheasant hunt too. Get out there and use the resource. We thought maybe that would stir up some bucks, maybe put a few more bucks on camera during the night that were kind of getting bumped around. Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. But yeah, so got a few deer that we're glad to see back. It just feels like everything's just starting to kind of heat up a little bit.
Yeah.
And like you said earlier, if there's a time to be in the woods, it's really now.
Yeah.
I have a good buddy that's only been out twice.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And I get that, he always, and like I've said before, he laughs at me. He's like, man, you spend so much time, it's kind of early. And I'm like, yeah, I know, but I still like to be out there.
Yeah.
And you never know.
Yeah, you really don't.
You never know. But it feels like we can go nowhere but up from here.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Yep.
I got a question for you.
Yep.
So
No, I'm just kidding.
at the spot that we've been hunting mostly right now,
Yep.
in years past when you've seen it, so to kind of just set the stage here, so the bottom that we hunt, there's 3 big fields. We can hunt the middle one. Obviously, the east and west one we can't. So this year, I've been thinking a lot about this, but this year, the one on the west is corn, we're beans, then beans again. Feels like to me right now, most of the deer are really focused on corn.
Yep.
Seems like. And it kind of makes sense why we're seeing so many deer on the neighbor to the west, because it's super tight to bedding. So they come out to bed, they just stay in that cornfield. There's no really reason for them to come over to the beans.
Right.
Whereas last year, the spot that we hunt and then the neighbor to the east, that was both corn.
Yep.
And we saw a lot more deer come off the bedding, basically walk straight through the beans, and then really hang out in the corn.
Yep.
Have you seen that in years past where
100%.
they just don't really need to travel near as far now?
Yeah, and it seems like the corn's good early and then the beans get good late.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and like I said, it's interesting because the corn is always better early, and then the beans they'll be out in that bean field late.
Yeah, exactly.
Like late season, they'll just be pounding that scratch. There'll be huge big sections just scratched out where they're looking for every soybean they can find. They can find. But that's 100%. It feels like when it's corn in that bottom, they have more of a reason to, and you'll see them out there and they're traveling to it.
Yeah, exactly.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And they'll, not that they won't mingle Molly out in the beans, but they're more on a mission to get to the corn.
Yeah,
you see it in the cameras too, big
You
time.
see it in the cameras, and
Yep.
like when we're sitting on the edges right now, man, they are just loaded up in that cornfield.
It's just that's what is so fun and so hard about that spot, because when it's corn in the bottom, it is really hard to try and get an idea what's going on.
Yeah.
Because you just can't put cameras in there.
Yeah.
And it's hard to get around.
Yeah.
Because there's 9 foot high corn around the whole dang thing.
Yeah.
So you can't put cameras. It's hard to get things on camera. That's what's nice about the beans is you get them on camera.
Yeah.
But then when they shed their velvet, they don't really want to be there.
Yeah,
As soon as the beans turn yellow, they're like, yep, see you, bye.
Yeah.
You know, so that's what's weird. And so he's got, if he has corn on the bottom, it's usually corn on one section and beans on the others.
Yeah.
And then he switches vice versa.
Yeah, exactly.
It just is by pure chance, I think, that he's kind of on the opposite rotation
Yeah, exactly.
with the other guy.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So, but, and that would be, and you can see that in the fact of what's to the east of us is deader than a doornail. There is nothing out there.
I remember
but
last-
when that's corn,
Oh my gosh.
holy, and there's bedding right next to it,
Yeah.
thick bedding.
Yeah.
They are holed up in there.
Yeah,
they
I
just
remember.
are. They just march right out, and you're like, oh, look at all the deer over there.
Yeah, I remember last year it was just craziest. Every single morning the sun came up, you're like, oh, there is 6 deer standing out there.
But if you ask me which I would rather have, I would rather have it. Well, man, I would probably rather have it like this. I would rather have it beans, because it's nice to be able to get an idea of what's around.
Yeah.
And then just knowing that, yeah, they're going to be holed up and they're going to go out to the corn, but they're still going to be cruising through there.
Yeah.
Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
they definitely will.
It's like you got a little bit more an idea. It's nice when it's corn though too, because at least they kind of have like a destination.
Yeah, and this time of year might be a little bit better.
Yeah.
But
Because I feel like, for example, the river on a corn year is way better.
yeah.
There's just
yeah.
a lot more cruising along there because they've got a reason to be out there. The river on a bean year, it seems like that's an afternoon only type deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Until the rut gets going, and then the river becomes a
Yeah, I mean
a
the
highway.
river. The river is a spot that and even really off, the ski hill and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Even that, I mean, it's just a perfect cruising spot where when it's the right time of year, there's gonna be deer there.
Mm-hmm.
Just right now, when we're kind of getting up to that point, it might just feel kind of slow.
Yeah. I think the other thing that's the real curveball for us in North Iowa, and I think a lot of the state of Iowa right now, is dry.
Yeah, so dry.
It's so funny because we talk about out that spot, this place we call the Thermal Hub, which is really kind of closer to the road.
Yeah.
And in the past, I told you that yesterday, I feel like I kind of took that for granted because I felt like it was too close to the road, it was too close to the house, ba-ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba. And then a few years back, my brother-in-law actually, which is kind of cool that he was like, maybe you should try this. And I'm like, really? He's like, yeah, man, if you're not seeing bucks, like, I don't know, dude, I'm just looking at it. And he goes, that looks really good.
Yeah.
I'm like, huh. Well, looking at it, we call it the Thermal Hub because it's all these ravines kind of coming together, super hard to hunt. When we've gone in there, we set a stand in there and you puff your wind indicator and it's just like, it's just going everywhere.
Yeah, one time you puff it,
Oh,
it's going
jeez.
straight north. Next time it's going straight south.
You
then the
basically
next time
set
it's
your
west.
you set your ozonics above your head and you smell ozone the whole time.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, wait, I got to switch. Oh, switch. Oh, no, I smell again. Oh, yeah. It's just so hard.
Yeah.
So when I figured that out years ago, I just hunted right on the edge of it, like right on the edge of it. So it's like if I had a real strong north wind, I'd come in from the south and hunt just on the edge.
Yeah.
And I'd hunt it on a real prevailing wind to kind of help a little bit. But if it's at anything calm, you just don't even go in there.
Yeah.
But we drove by that the other day and we've been watching a lot of deer march in there,
Yeah. And march out too.
We drove by there and what's right near the road? A little bitty pond.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? There's not a lot of water.
Yeah.
There is no water out there. There's that little pond and there's the river.
Yeah.
So there's the deer have got to be moving through there for that specific reason as well.
Yeah,
So I think that's kind of the wild card. Usually there's a little creek that runs through there.
And-
There's just more water.
And it's corn up there too,
Yes.
which is really tight to the same bedding that is tight to the corn on the bottom. It's the same ridge.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
It just, and we don't have any cameras up on top there. And so it's just,
Well, I think you said something this weekend that was interesting too. It's funny because it's the grass is always greener on the other side of the fence, right?
Yeah,
that
yeah.
whole fallacy.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's funny when I stood on the fence with that guy.
Yeah.
I told him, I said, it's funny because I look in there and go, man, oh man. And I said, you look over here and go, man, oh man.
Yeah.
He goes, oh yeah. He goes, when I sit in here, I look out there and I go, golly, there's just so many deer out there.
Yeah.
And I said, and I look in there and say the same thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And he's like, yeah. He's like, and I go, well, it's grass isn't always greener. And he's like, yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
But the problem that we have with this piece, and it's kind of funny because somebody may listen to this. What I'm about to say is count your lucky stars if you have bedding area,
Yeah.
because that's really what we lack on both private pieces. There's not a lot of bedding area. The other spot does have a bit more bedding. That's a little bit better.
Yeah.
But this is really tough. It's all transition. It's all transition.
Yeah.
There is a little bit of bedding area, but it's only one little section.
Yeah.
Not that a buck won't hold a doe down anywhere. He'll hold her down in a itty bitty little like fence line.
Yeah, exactly.
When it comes right down to it.
Yeah.
But now where it's like, oh, the deer want to feed here, they want to drink here, and they want to bed here. We don't have this here. Right? We only have the feed and the water.
Yeah.
We don't have the bedding, which is, some people may listen and go, that's totally fine, dude. That's okay.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. It is okay.
Yeah.
But when you're trying to hunt deer in October, we can't get up against the bedding area. So we inherently see deer right before dark.
Yeah.
Because we can't nuzzle up and get close and maybe try to find that buck on his feet, getting out of a bedding area, going to catch a sip.
Yeah,
that doesn't work for us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
100%. Yeah. Yeah. We talked about that last night on the way home. It's like the spot that we hunt is just lacking that diversity you need to really have good bedding. Whereas the neighbors, they got tall, grassy, nice strip. They got
and it's funny because and again, it is what it is. Like I hope this doesn't come off like I'm complaining.
Yeah,
because
no, not at all.
I am very appreciative that I get to hunt it and that I don't have to lease it. And I just
awesome spot.
Yeah,
too. I mean,
it's an awesome spot. Like I've taken I'll never forget one of the first times I took my brother-in-law out there during turkey season. He had heard me talk about it, and then I took him in there, and he's like, "Geez, man."
Yeah,
I'm like, "What?" And he's like, he's like, "It's all of this," and I'm like, "Yeah," and he goes, "And that over there?" I'm like, "Yeah," and he goes, "And this right here?" I'm like, "Yeah," and I goes, "I haven't shown you the best spot yet." Then we get down on the bottom. He's like, "And it's all that?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like,
it's
"Jeez,
sweet.
man." And so it is.
Yeah.
It is an amazing spot. If you owned it or you leased it and you could do something, the first thing you'd do was put in a bedding area.
Yeah.
You would just put in something of tall grass or something that would just be, hey, give the deer a reason to be here.
Maybe some TSI work in the hardwoods or something.
Yes. You know what I mean? It's like when you look at the tongue.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you put a food plot in the corner of that tongue and you just leave it there.
Yeah.
And then you put a big buffer strip along the edge of the trees.
Yeah.
Or just something, or that wet spot in the middle.
Yeah.
Just let it grow.
Yeah,
like just let it go. Just let it grow up and let them have it. Make them they could go somewhere. Which it's funny though because those types of bedding areas on a spot like that would make that so hard to hunt.
Yeah, it
dude.
would.
Because what do deer do when they bed? They bed down where they can see and they can smell. If you put a bedding area out there, you wouldn't even be able to hunt the river.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they would see you coming from a mile away, literally.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing about it too, is it's kind of conducive to the way we have it because they don't bed there. We can kind of sneak around a little bit more than you'd be able to do in other spots.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Because they don't really bed there.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we beat that dead horse.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess the moral of the story is that Nick and I think about deer hunting constantly, or just generally hunting.
Yeah.
And figure out a way to have conversation about it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yeah, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't thinking about turkey hunting a lot this weekend. There's been Tom's gobbling in the morning.
Well, I'll tell you what,
yelping,
that Saturday morning, we're sitting in there Saturday morning. We're two different spots, and you hear these hens just
cutting up.
Oh, big dominant, whatever you want to call her, the big dominant hen or the main hen or whatever she is. She was really letting everybody know, this is where I am. I'm going to fly down first. This is where I want to go. She was really making sure everybody knew. I mean, she was.
Oh, yeah.
And then she was going, she was cutting and yelping so hard that finally these young, Jakes were just like, instinctively like, I got to gobble.
Yeah.
So they try to half gobble and they like half gobble again. And then the big Tom, he gobbled all the way. And everybody got quiet.
You didn't hear anything.
You didn't hear anything. No more hens, no more Jakes half gobbling. It was one big gobble from him and everybody stopped. It was like, you're cool. Sorry.
I know, and that was the first thing when we got back to the truck. That was the first thing. I'm like, did you hear that Tom gobble this morning? We talked about that a little bit before we talked about any deer.
Yeah. It's funny, and I don't know if there's any truth in that, and maybe that's just the story that I conjure up. But I feel like I've experienced that before, where turkeys have a real like active conversation, and a real very clear pecking order. Mm-hmm. And man, when he gobbled, it was like the woods just were like, whoo.
Yeah, it was actually really cool.
Yep, that was awesome. I actually, on Saturday evening, I should have videoed it. I should have just taken my phone. The sun was setting perfect orange and pink, and there's this big, huge cottonwood down there. And I'm watching all these turkeys fly up in the tree. Man, it was cool to see.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah. But the other thing I wanted to mention today is just a little bit of a public service announcement is, and I've said this before, but make sure that you're putting on your harness.
Yeah.
Make sure you're putting on your safety harness. Not only when you're sitting in the tree stand, and I was actually guilty of this the other day. I need to take my own medicine here. Even if you're setting stands or you're, more importantly, moving stands.
Yeah.
Because I feel like setting stands is harder than moving stands. Moving stands is really easy, especially if you have a second person. When you can hand stuff down,
Mm-hmm.
you can take stuff down pretty fast. At least I feel like I do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So sometimes like, I'll just run out there quick and just like take everything down. Just put your harness on.
Yeah.
Get your lineman's belt around the tree.
Yeah.
You know, sift your lifeline down as you go.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If it's just a tall tree, if you're going around branches, I get it. And then when you're putting stands up, use a lifeline.
Yeah.
Man, those things are so nice.
Yeah.
Just to know that you're tied in the whole way you go up, just use your lifelines. We actually heard a story of a guy that was trying to set a stand, didn't have a harness on, didn't have a lifeline up,
Yeah, it didn't have anything.
and was trying to put the stand up, and the stand fell. He had his hand on the ladder, and he tried to catch the stand instead of letting it go. He caught it or held onto it, and then
Screwed up his
something
elbow.
in his bicep or his elbow,
Yeah.
and he was out for a few weeks. And I'm like, and I said right to him, I'm like, man, dude, at least it's just your elbow.
Yeah.
I'm like, at least you weren't laying on the ground going, well, I don't know how I'm going to call 911 because I can't feel my arms because I'm paralyzed.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, geez, bro. And I'm like, you didn't have a harness on? No, I need to go get one. I'm like, I don't know what it is.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Just go get a harness. Put on a harness. It's just not worth it.
Yeah.
And the other thing I'll say about that too is a lot of people don't realize on your harness, on the rope that goes for your carabiner, whatever you call that, the safety line.
Yeah.
They have a little orange tag that has an expiration. I think the harnesses are good for like 5 years, and then you're supposed to replace them.
Yeah.
Mine, I'm on the 5th year right now. This will be the last season for that harness, and then I need to just get a new one.
Yeah.
You know, it was built in 2020, and it says around that expires after 5 years.
Right.
And I think it said it was built in like December of 2020 or something. So it really expires right at the end of this year.
Yeah.
Or whatever it was. It was 5 years. I knew this was my last year.
Yeah.
So just put your harness on, use lifelines.
Yep.
You can get reflective ones or non-reflective. I really like the reflective. It's a great when you're walking through the woods. I mean, you really do. It's a great way to look up with a red light or any light and just go boop. Oh, there's lifeline.
Yeah. Reset your straps.
Yes.
All of it.
Yep. Reset your straps. You know, you don't realize like the trees grow. They get tighter and they get tighter and they get tighter. Even just going up there and loosening a ratchet strap and then tightening it back up.
Yeah.
Just getting it reset.
Yep.
You know, there's a lot of truth in that. I was with John Bergman, good friend of mine. We were videoing a hunt a couple years back, and we were sitting in a double stand.
Yep.
And you know the crazy story about that is we were sitting up there. He had a harness. He had his harness on, and he had to go to the bathroom. He was trying to take layers off, and he was going to unclip. And I said, "Hey, man, like you don't want to do that. You know, just stay clipped in. You know, I figure out a way to do it. Last thing you want to do is like, you know,
Yeah.
Die while you're trying to take a pee.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
kind of said something else if you can fill in the blank.
Yeah.
And he kind of was like, ah, ha, ha. We laughed, and got all squared away. And we're sitting there as the afternoon went on. And we kept hearing something just make a little bit of a tick, like a tick noise.
Yeah.
We're like, gosh. And we thought it was maybe the stand was creaking, right? And was just tick, And he was running camera. So I was sitting here and he was off to my left.
Mm-hmm.
Tick. And then finally, it was right towards the evening and the strap broke.
Yeah.
And it was the top strap, not the bottom strap, the top strap. And he just fell off and it happened as fast as it could have happened. I mean, dude, I'm talking a snap.
Yeah.
And there he was hanging there from the tree.
Yeah.
And it scared the both of us. I saw the look on his face. If you know John's like, he's a character.
Yeah.
Like John's one of my favorite people.
Yeah.
Super funny. Like just one of those guys that when you're around him, like he just really like lights up the room. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like,
Yeah.
oh, you're funny.
Yeah.
Like he's just a good dude.
Yep.
And like, you can see it in him. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know, that maybe sounds weird, but I feel like you can.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget looking down at him and he had a scared look on his face.
Oh yeah.
And luckily there was a branch there that he could stand on.
Right.
Right. And I don't even remember the conversation. It was like, dude, did that just happen? He's like, yeah, man, what are we going to do? And I'm like, and I was it's like, hey, dude, the hunt's over, man. Let's just figure out how to get out of here.
Yeah.
So I got all my stuff all squared away and I'm like, I'll get down. That way you can step onto mine.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then do everything you need to do. And dude, it gives me goosebumps to even think about it. Freaked me out.
Yeah.
And his story about that and his experience was he said it happened in slow motion. He said when he fell, he could like hear and feel, you don't realize, but the line on your safety harness, it's folded over.
Yeah.
So the idea behind that is if you fall, that's meant to help try to slow you down.
Yeah.
You follow me?
Yep.
So those things rip. They burp, burp, and it went, from my side, it just sounded like a pop.
Yeah.
But he remembers hearing the strap go like pop, 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 and then catching him.
Yeah.
Dude, it's just so, like you said, you just never know whether it's the straps, just things wear out. Or these tree stands are out there for years on end.
Yeah.
The weather, the rain, the rust, it can all work things over.
Right.
And so it's just nice to know if you're clipped in, you're in your lifeline, you've got it around the tree. If something were to happen,
Right.
you're at least going to just dangle there.
Yeah, exactly.
And you can figure it out after that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's better than falling to the ground. I know a couple people that have been paralyzed from falling on tree stands. It's
Right.
just not worth it.
Yeah.
So that's all I'm going to say about that.
Yep.
Don't lose sight of that. I know the heat, the rut. Everybody's excited. Everybody wants to get out there. And maybe you're like, oh, I'm going to get back into that one spot. Man, I haven't been in there for so long. That's where I need to be. That's where he is. Well, if it's an old stand that you haven't checked for 3 or 4 years or a year or two, bring an extra ratchet strap with
Yeah.
you. Just make sure you got your harness on. Ba, 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 ba.
Yep.
Like I said, talk about a couple sad things here. A little bump, the Debbie Downer part of the conversation. We're going to do something at the end to ramp it back up.
Yeah.
But the other thing to talk about is EHD in North Iowa. So I actually called and talked to biologists to try to get to the bottom of it because sometimes, it kind of feels like it's like the rumor mill.
Yeah.
And you don't want to just keep feeding that beast.
Yeah.
So I just thought I'd go to the source. I'm like, hey, what do you know? You know what I mean? Sounds like there hasn't been any confirmed cases in like the Clear Lake, Mason City, Iowa area.
Yeah.
But it does sound like he's gotten calls
Yeah.
about people finding deer along water.
Yeah.
The tricky thing about that is like deer can go to water and die for a multitude of reasons. They get hit on the road.
Right.
Deer get injured naturally.
Yeah.
Deer are going to go to water.
Yep.
So he talked a lot about if you start to see multiple deer on water, you know what I mean?
Right.
That's a real indicator. He did say, is there blue tongue / EHD in North Iowa? Yes, probably.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, that sucks.
Yeah.
I know there's been reported cases. If you're familiar with North Iowa, if you know where Morse Lake is, which is like down by Belmont, there's been some reported cases of EHD down there. So that sucks.
Yeah.
That's not very far away.
Yeah.
It's, it's doing what it does.
Yeah.
This year isn't helping anything with how dry it's been,
It's
and
so
those
dry.
and those little duck ponds or rivers or creeks, they're just drying up.
Yeah.
And so where the deer are drinking, the little midges or whatever, it's just nothing's helping it.
Yeah, exactly.
We actually finally got like a measurable amount of rain in Mason City last week.
And it let loose for a little bit.
Yeah, it actually got hail.
Yeah.
I was raking my yard this weekend and I raked some leaves, and it was wet in the bottom of the leaves, which I was like, what is that stuff that's making the ground? Oh, that's water.
Yeah.
It's been a while.
Yeah. Yeah.
Raking leaves was easy because there was no resistance. Like just like the leaves, it's just like the ground is hard as a rock. We're walking through the fields the other day. Remember, I took down and said, "Look at that!
It's all cracked.
When was the last time you saw cracked ground in Iowa?
Yeah.
Like that. It looks like a desert.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just
exactly.
cracking.
Yeah.
It's wild. But yeah, so EHD is rearing its head. We should really put a call into Jace. It'd be interesting to know what he's hearing.
seeing.
What he's hearing about. I know you would talk to me about one of the guys from Midwest Whitetail that had really found a bunch.
Yep.
Which really is too bad when he's finding his target bucks. You know.
Yeah, exactly.
I really wonder about that with a couple of these public spots.
Yeah, no, definitely.
When all of a sudden, and again, the thing that's the tricky part is we have had such a weird the rut has so far kind of laid out so weird.
Yeah.
And we've really kind of had to look up at the roller coaster and wait in line for a long time.
Yeah.
So is it just that, or is there something to it? You know what I
Right,
mean?
exactly,
Like all of a sudden we go from getting 40 some bucks on camera to like 5,
Yeah.
one good one,
Yeah,
2 good
exactly,
ones.
yeah.
It's like, oh, that's kind of weird.
Yeah.
Like
Definitely.
we're like hoping to count numerically again, and we count them on one hand.
Yeah.
So it's been a little rough.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll tell you what. The one thing I'll say though, to try to bring the conversation back up, make it a little positive, is I am excited about what is in front of us.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Best is yet to come for sure.
Yep. We're actually there's some good high pressure on Thursday, which is Halloween. If you have a chance to get out on Thursday, man, it looks like it's going to be high pressure. Looks good. Weather looks good. And again, if you can just get out anytime in the next,
Yeah, exactly.
basically between now and Thanksgiving, get
Worth
ready
it to get out. Yeah.
because it's going to get good because it's got to happen at some point.
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to go and all of a sudden it's Christmas and the rut never happened. It's going to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, yeah, it's going to be awesome. I'm really, really excited about it.
Yeah, I'm stoked too.
Yeah.
Be good.
Okay, so rut report completed. Moral of the story, it's starting to get going. Get ready. Here it comes. Ready or not, let's go. Point of no return. Enjoy the ride. Ozonics Killerwinds podcast. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Good luck out there. Do some deer hunting. Shoot the big one or anyone that walks by like me.
Any deer that walks by.
What did I didn't mean human. If
Yeah, not anyone. Any deer.
Not any deer, yeah. Only shoot deer or legal animals.
Yeah.
If I said that the wrong way.
Just kind of sounded weird.
Did I sound like I was like going to go out
You
there?
said, hope you shoot the big one or anyone that walks by.
Oh, yeah.
It just kind of sounded like you were talking about humans.
Oh,
but
no.
We're not.
Shoot
Deer.
Yeah, shoot whitetails, the big ones, or other legal whitetails with antlerless tags or any other buck if that's what you want to do.
Yes.
Or a coyote if it walks by too, because coyotes are terrible.
Yes. All right. See you next week.
Stay classy.